All right, podcast world, we are back with another Big Hunt Guys podcast. Got myself, Brady Miller here, and special guest. I consider you a really good friend, too. So, friend.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I got Mr. Cody Nelson himself.
This is a little overdue.
I know. We've been trying to do this. We've been trying to do this for a long time.
We haven't, not.
It's kind of hard for our schedules to mesh to get you over here.
You're Mr. Jet Setter.
And I'm kind of always gone a lot, so.
I know.
But we're finally here. Finally got the optics guru himself. How do you like that title that Jay Scott always gives you, optic guru?
It's funny because it started a long time ago, and he would always ask questions or what we would always be doing stuff, and I don't know. It's kind of just stuck over the years.
Because the guy you can just call up, pick brains about optics.
He would always describe me to somebody else, at wherever I was working at the time, and say, go see my guy. He's the guru, whatever. So I don't know. It just kind of stuck. But I have fun with it, and people seem to have fun with it. And
can I get a shirt made that says optics guru and then Cody Nelson?
I don't know. Maybe we need to put one of those out there, I guess. But yeah, it's
because I like it as well.
Yeah, my whole thing is that anything to do with optics, I love.
Yeah. So what really excites you when it comes to optics? Is it helping people with optics? Like, did you just love glassing back in the day and you just started falling into this, or?
To be perfectly honest with it, I remember. I've always been around binoculars. I don't care if it was riding around in the truck with my dad when I was, 3 years old and watching him do it, or I always thought it was just kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And we would, and I always thought when I was a kid, you'd hear it 10 or 12 years old, and my dad would say, yeah, we were glassing some bucks, or whatever he would say, we were glassing all day, or, just didn't seem, whatever it was. And it just always kind of stuck with me. I always kind of thought that was a cool thing to do. And, I remember it probably really set in on the first coos deer hunt I ever went on. And I went with a really good friend of the family, Marvin Smith, and he and my dad used to coach football together back in the day. And Marv, he took me out, and I remember it was raining, and, he had this little tripod and everything. It was kind of, I'm looking at him like, what's he doing?
Yeah.
This is so cool. And we found bucks that day, but I had a horrible time finding them. And everything I did was laborious at best to try to figure out what animal he was looking at. It wasn't overly distant. It just was where that deer lived. It was just hard to see. And I had borrowed. I can't remember. I had borrowed on that hunt. I was carrying a set of Bausch and Lomb. I can't remember. They might have been elites on that hunt, but my mom, it was kind of a gift, if you will, a birthday gift or whatever. And this was a December hunt, and then I had a little I borrowed a pair of little 9x25 loopholed binoculars that were the green.
Oh yeah.
And even back then, even on a compact set of binoculars, I was like, man, these are this glass is so much better than that glass, and it never even dawned on me, And then I tried to figure out, I got myself a little tripod, it was a little Coleman tripod. It was a pound.
Oh yeah.
Super wobbly. The legs didn't articulate or anything, but I was trying to figure out I used to drape. Just on a little tiny ball head.
Just try to put them on there?
I would just try to drape them over. And, we didn't have mounts.
Yeah.
Those things, they were just so few and far in between. And the machining side of things hadn't even come close to getting started yet.
So how far do you think optics have came? And since you started glassing way back in the day till now, are we spoiled?
Oh, 100%.
Just absolutely spoiled right now.
Because, and I don't think, look, the good glass... I think there was a definitive time, and I just remember late 90s when things just exploded. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of when Swarovski really hit the big scene. And I can remember, I was helping Jay, and we were doing a hunt, and I remember scouting, and I remember I made the kind of the observation at the end of the day. I said, "Hey, did you guys think about all the people that we saw scouting today?" And back then, when I say saw all the people, I mean I'm talking like a handful, right?
Yeah.
It was Unit 10. There's hardly. I mean, nobody was doing it. I could sit on a glassing point for days and not see anybody else. That's just not the case now, but I remember that day, everybody that we'd seen that was scouting, everybody either had a pair of 10-42 Zeiss, or they had a pair of 10-42 SLCs, or they had like a pair of 10-40 Zeiss. Like everything we saw was of high quality binos. Mm-hmm. And I remember that being a fairly distinctive point, like, man, things have really changed.
Yeah.
And so that, I mean, that was kind of the that I just remember like 2000. That's when I felt it. I could notice it. That like everybody you saw had big glass at that time.
Do you feel it was advantageous to growing up in Arizona to become like a more proficient glasser, hunting coos deer and all that stuff?
100%. That's all traced. And I say traced. I'm sure somebody could do a history of it, and there's been a few people around that certainly could probably tell it better than I. But I used to hear the stories because my dad used to be a principal in San Manuel. And San Manuel, that's right at the foothills of the Santa Catalina's and the Galeros, and both of those that's like the Mecca. I mean, that's literally the heart of coos deer country in Arizona. Yep. So, I remember distinctly my dad traveling down to Jensen's, in Tucson, and he was talking to an older guy that said, "You need to, if you're glassing, if you can't use this," and it was a 1560 Zeiss, by the way.
Yep.
And back in that day, I think they were like $1,500, and then. And so he said, if you can't use this, you got to have a set of 1050 customs, Bushnell customs. And that at the time, I think that's what all the game and fish guys were given. Okay. So there was like this, and it was just this thing that all those guys, there's so much history around glassing like that from tripod. I mean, I remember reading articles with Craig Boddington and Warner Glenn and Dwayne Adams. And I remember a very distinct picture of Dwayne Adams, and he was super young at the time, and he was probably a new guide at the time, where he was sitting up on a rock perch, and he had this, just this crappy old little tripod, but he had these giant 1560 Zeiss on there. And I was sold. I've got to do this. And that passion started from that. And so, you use the 10-50 customs, and then I found a pair of Oceanas that my dad had got that were basically the East German, West German, difference there of 1560s. I mean, they didn't have the same coatings, but the interiors, it was basically the same glass. So I wound up getting a pair of they were, most people don't know what Oceana is, but that became Dr. Optics.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So, that whole part of it. So you just get immersed into it, and you could just see, there was times where people would you'd be sitting on a switchback or, looking off into some canyon or whatever, and people go, "Oh, what are you looking at?" They're just puzzled, what are you doing? And they'd sit down with you, and I just kind of lean back from the binos and let them look, and they were like, "Oh,
glassing up a tripod's a game changer."
This is completely different. I can't believe you can do that. And there's been a handful of those moments over the years, but there was a day, first time I ever looked through a pair of 1560 Zeiss. I was coming out of the backcountry. My dad and I backpacked in, just carrying too much stuff and craziness, and having a great time with it. And we'd seen deer, just didn't find anything that we wanted to shoot and whatever. But we come off the ridge, and we had to hook back onto a road, and it kind of looped us back. We'd made this big giant circle and spent the night in a couple different places, and we were looping back. Well, there was a horrible rainstorm coming in that we kind of knew about, but we didn't know how bad it was going to be, and it was torrential. It was glad we got out when we did. But we come around a corner, and we'd come off the trail and got onto the service road, and we were hiking around, and down way at the bottom was an old Blazer, and I remember distinctly because we ran into that guy in several different places and over the years, and he was I think he was from Superior or Globe, and his name was Fonso, and he had a big old red beard on him, and just super cool dude. He was always nice to us, always polite. There was none of this like, what are you doing in my spot kind of stuff. And we just always laughed that we was kind of wound up in the same places all the time. But I remember when we were coming around the corner, and he wasn't even using them on a tripod. He was laid across the top of his truck, Huh. And I could see from where we were at, I'm like, man, what is he using? That's like a big pair of binoculars. Yep. And so we got all the way down there, and he was just as nice as can be. Ended up giving us a ride back to our truck.
There you go.
But in the trade off of that, I was like, excuse me, sir, may I just take a peek through those?
Yeah.
And I looked through them, and again, it's like one of those moments, like aha, like
you just remember hooked. Forever. Yeah.
I'll never forget that, and that's still one of my favorite pair of binoculars today. Just the Poro Prism binocular it's superior at moving light. Mm-hmm. So I just wish we could take today's glass, and if people would accept it, do Poro Prism, and man, they would be incredibly. I just think they'd be incredible.
Do you wish, or maybe do you have like a collection of super old optics at your house that you just like have sitting there, or maybe you sold some of yours? Like, dang, I wish I kind of had that thing now, just to remember the good old days. Or,
I've got some stuff hanging around, and some of it was with my dad, and my brother's got some stuff too, but we don't have a ton of it. It's not like collector stuff,
yeah,
but
exactly.
I've got a couple pieces that are cool.
Huh.
That my kids could go out and use them today and be way farther ahead than what I was.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Brady, when all that's, I just love getting behind glass. I love spending. I know there's something about spending the time. Mm-hmm. That solitude. That
you can watch nature,
quiet,
be nature, and
I try to turn the phone off and enjoy what we're doing. And but I think the biggest reward is in the drive now. Without a doubt, it's that text that you get when a guy, regardless of whether he's upgraded his optics or whether he's a new hunter that didn't have a clue what he was doing or whatever, that you've just kind of helped get into that. I've always, I don't know. I don't know that I think maybe I invented the wording, but I certainly didn't invent glassing on a tripod. But get good glass.
Yep.
I don't care if that's upgrading from the blister pack at Walmart to, I don't care if it's $100 or $200 or $500, whatever that upgrade is. Putting it on a tripod and be methodical and slow down, and some of those things are debatable, but just in general, if you'll do those three things, mm-hmm. I promise that you'll see more game.
Yep, I know. So it can be a complete game changer for me as well. Because like you sit there back in the day and you think you're glassing really effectively, you're glassing up your knees, if your elbows perched up, or you're just got done hiking and you sit down really quickly and you start glassing, you can start feeling your heartbeat or your breathing bounce it up and down.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you throw those suckers on a tripod. Oh my God.
Well, and really the thing that it's a force multiplier. It's exponentially creates. It takes the effect. Like just say for instance, if you only have a 10. So what? Mm-hmm. If you put it on a tripod, it exponentially magnifies what your effective range is. So, why not?
Because I think you're more focused, dude.
100% you are.
You're dialed on the task at hand, and you're not worried about stabilization at that point, and you can literally just lock in that spot and look for animals or start panning around.
It comes down to eye fatigue, and people don't think of their eyes is constantly your eyes are constantly working, to light and the images that you're seeing, and if you do that all day and you're not having the optics steady, well, no wonder why you want to put Visine in them and take a or drink a beer and hang out, like
just
relax,
calm down
or
somehow.
Just close the eyes for a while. But I think that's the biggest thing is that I learned. I don't know when it was, I guess, but there was just something about having somebody, walk back in the door and go, "Hey, man, like you changed my whole like hunting experience. Like I didn't know what that felt like."
Yeah, that's super rewarding.
And because I don't know, I've been that guy that's gone walking everywhere and then gone, "Oh man, we didn't see a deer today," or whatever, and you think to yourself, man, if you can let people see more and have more, I mean, think about all the kids that get to like hang out and glass with their dads now. And I mean, I've known all kinds of different kids that have just like taken it to it really, really well. And they're better glassers than we are.
Oh yeah. Those young eyes that we don't have anymore.
Oh man, my kids got eagle. Yeah. I mean, they're super, super talented. I mean, it's just that whole thing of giving somebody that experience. And I don't think that changes for me. I don't care whether it's 30 years ago, the first time I laid, eyes on a really good coos buck, or whether it's a spike, or whether, it was last year on a hunt, I still get excited. Like what, I mean, you're hitting each other like, "Hey, I got one right here." Like what, I just never, every single time it's the same excitement.
Yep, I love that.
It's the best. And so Brady, in short, that's really, I just get off on helping people.
Yep, that's what I've always liked about you. Because I've known you for a long time, even before I started working at GOHUNT here. And one thing I've always appreciated is I can literally pick up the phone, text you, call you, and you instantly respond and answer questions. But you answer them in a way that's very understandable. You break things down very easily, and you don't give me a BS answer. You give me straight talk truth of what you're thinking at that time, or what basically my experience are.
It's not rocket science. And I really appreciate you saying that. And I'm just trying to listen to people and what they're doing.
Yep.
Because some people just need to be turned in just a slightly different direction and go, and they're doing great. And other people, quite unfrankly, some guys are just intimidated by the whole thing and they don't have a clue. And so I just try to listen to what they're doing.
So that's basically like if you get a customer calls you up and it's like, "Hey, I'm going out west and I need a pair of binos. I don't know where to start." Like, how do you kind of break that down for that person on the phone to kind of give them their best choice? Or do you kind of try to weigh out, like, where do you hunt normally? What's your hunting style? Do you want to cross over a piece of optic, like using both places, or you just want?
Well, I think that, again, it's about slowing that process down and going, okay, so are you a guy that's just coming out once? Or is this going to be a yearly thing? Or you get, I mean, like so many of us, we get captivated by it, and that happens all the time. But or are you a guy that literally maybe more sits in his tree stand, September, October, whatever the deer seasons are, and then he's just going to go out once or twice? Well, if a guy tells me that, and he really needs the 8s most of the time, let's say, because the 8s have a wider field of view, easier to handhold, well, he can take those 8s and put them on a tripod and effectively glass better, longer, farther than he would with his handheld, right? Yeah. So sometimes it's just about like, okay, if you can't spend that money, or you're not trying to spend that money, or whatever you're trying to do, you're trying to just be more effective, get a tripod. Yeah. Mount your binos on a tripod and figure that out. So there's a whole ways to go about doing that. And it's, again, to me, it's just about listening. It's less about ego. And to me, it's just trying to figure out that equation, how to solve it for that person. Yep. And maybe that's what I do, is that I just take each one of those guys to heart and go, okay, there's things that I don't know about that I go ask people's expertise. Yep. And this is how I like to get information. So I try to do that with them.
Yep, that's good. So obviously we're going to dive into a ton of optics questions because I got the man here. So
I knew you were going to do something.
this is going to be a full podcast full of exciting optic stuff. I just want to let people know too right now, because we're going to talk about some optics and gear. So we want to try to get the best gear in your guys' hands. So you guys want to sign up right now for Insider or Explorer. We have a special little promo code going on, promo code podcast. So what that's going to do, you sign up for Insider, you're going to get 50 points back to the GOHUNT Gear Shop. So that's $50 you can use in GOHUNT Gear. So what's great about that too is like, guys can start saving up these points when they buy things. You could buy a backpack, you buy a pair of optics, you'll see a points thing next to it. Those points are points back in the gear store, and 1 point equals $1. So guys can start saving up their money by buying other gear, buying just food or boots, and all of a sudden, save up money for some optics, save up money for some tripods. So use promo code podcast for Insider, you get 50 points back. You just want our Maps only membership Explorer, use promo code podcast, you get 20 points back to the GOHUNT Gear Shop. So we're all about getting the best research tools, map tools in your hands, and then giving you a kickback in the gear shop, because a lot of times, like we're talking about right now, having some certain pieces of gear is going to benefit you on a hunt, whether it's optics, whether it's boots, whether it's anything, and just picking up the phone, talking to Cody and picking his brain about, tripods, binos, spotters, and I'm sure you get a ton of questions all the time. What do you think is the most common question you probably get overall?
It's probably hey, I'm out east heading west.
Yep, you get that a lot.
What to do, and I think that's probably the most common. The other common one is hey, I've had these binos for a long time. It's time I upgrade. Okay. So between those two, it really, quite frankly, is that, and then you've got rifle scopes in there too. But I will tell you that, well, in my opinion, I think it's not a mistake. It's just not knowing, or maybe, you're just not involved with it as much as we are. But the idea that somebody has to have a spotting scope to come west it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So would you say?
And I'm not making fun of anybody, but I get that question so much that if when they don't use, because I use a spotting scope maybe 10%, 50%.
I mean,
tops. I mean, we just don't use them that much. I'm using it to validate, verify. Like, is it a deer? Is it not a deer? Is it a buck? Is it not a buck? Whatever you use it for, I'm still only using it I don't. Spotter is a mistake. I don't use it to quote unquote spot game. I use it to validate and verify. For me.
Yeah, you might have a buck bedded in a patch of trees or in the shade. Is that a stick? Is that an antler? Yep. Trying to pick that up. And so you think a guy would maybe better spent when he has that discussion with you, like, should I put my money into a spotter, or should I get a nice pair of binos on a tripod with them?
Binos on a tripod. It's a force multiplier. Exponentially big. I mean, those are the things that are going to help you see more game immediately.
Because you're using those, like you said, 90% of the time you're going to be on binos, and you're putting a stock on an animal, you're going to be using binos as well.
Yep.
And then just trying to find game is just.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as simple, and most people, they buy these big giant spotters and.
Then they don't want to pack them around.
Then they become giant paperweights.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I don't even know why I bought that. And that's, when you and I have talked about this before, but that's why when people ask me about, well, hey, should I just buy a pair of 15s or 18s or something to if I really want to look at long range? Absolutely. Yes.
Yep. So you say, no doubt.
Use whatever is going to be more effective for you. And spotting scopes that you got to be patient with them, and you got to use them to get better at them. I mean, I know you can use patches for helping your eye fatigue and your facial muscle fatigue because people can't squint or do whatever for long periods of time.
Super remote looking like a pirate.
I totally get it. But that doesn't always, I just don't think that's always the answer. I think if people use, bigger optics, or more magnification on tripods, I think they'll see more game and be more efficient and be way happier at the end of it. That's the way I look at it.
Speaking of glassing off a tripod, I know I get this question a lot, or people look at photos like, oh, you're using that tripod backwards with your binos mounted on it. Do you always have the handle forward, or do you have the handle backwards?
Okay, so
and is there a correct way?
Well, no, there's no correct way.
That's the answer I was hoping for.
I think you do it however it works for you. Me personally, I'm always handle forward.
Yep.
And the reason for that is that generally speaking, if the tripod is here and I have my hand on the trundle, right, where all three legs come together, I can kind of set my hand and move that, that way. I'm not saying I've never done it, but a lot of times, like I can't have them where they just kind of go back into my chest like that. I'm a big, broad guy, and it doesn't work that way for me. But some guys like to have that the handle come back to them and turned all the way out, and where they can kind of hey, look, I don't care how you do it.
Yep.
As long as you're making your transitions and the glass is smooth and your stops and starts knock yourself out. If that's the way you want to do it, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I always like having it forward because I always try to have my handle on the right side. That way I'm taking like my pinky extending and I'm kind of grabbing it like it's a ball head in a way, and then I'm kind of just working it up or down. And then I can kind of push it left or right. And sometimes I even just make it loose, and I'm even just pushing with my nose.
Well, and that's the thing is like I can, like you can almost, like sometimes you're just trying to move it just that, and you're either balancing it up or down with your finger. It's weird to kind of think sometimes that, there's just like these little methods that you have about how to push it one way or the other. And, like I had a guy last night that texted me, and he's like, hey man, he's like, this tripod, it's not doing this. I'm like, oh, put a little tension on like just feather in the tension.
Yep.
Like tighten it up just a little bit so that the balance that the glasses won't fall, or and he called me back. He was like, man, that was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I think some people don't think of that very often too, because I'm always adjusting the tension on my left and right, and then up and down too. I'm constantly finagling that as I'm glassing. I'm tightening, I'm loosening it. So like I said, sometimes I'll make it super loose, so literally my nose can just go from right to left.
I think if you're gridding, there's certain times to grid and certain time. It all depends on terrain and however you're doing it with that's a whole nother podcast. But I think what happens is that guys, if you're gridding in a true fashion, generally speaking, I'll open the panning motion where it's not loose or sloppy, but just enough so I can push it whatever way I want to.
I think it's just an experience thing too, to know how tight or how loose to make it.
Yeah, well, because but think about somebody like me that like I'm constantly changing optics.
Yeah.
So, I just kind of feather in the resistance, if you will, until my test is always like, if I feather in the resistance to the weight of whatever optic I'm using, I want to be able to do like a figure 8 with that pan head.
Yep.
And at any instant, let go, and I want it to stick.
Yeah.
Like it won't droop, it won't go side, nothing. So if I can do that, then I don't need to do anything else.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. You're kind of put you on the spot, maybe, because I heard this from two people now recently. Okay, I'll preface. Maybe I'll just ask you the question.
Okay.
And then I'll do my little response here. When you're gridding, let's jump on gridding really quickly.
Okay.
Because I have this experience happened recently this year where a guy told me how he grids, and then literally my dad texted me not even 5 days later. It's like, hey, I was watching this military YouTube video, and they're talking about how they grid and how it was totally opposite of what I do. And this other guy, Joel Turner, told me the same exact way. So I want to hear your grid. I was always doing it before. So do you grid left to right or right to left?
I would almost always tell you, if I had to think about it. First of all,
because you read left to right.
First of all, it's always the terrain.
Okay. Yep.
But I would tell you in a general fashion, I do like I read the page.
Yep. That's what I've always done too. And then Joel Turner told me, because he's big military background, that if you do it right to left, if you do it opposite of what your eye and your mind naturally do, you will slow your mind down a little bit more. And then so you start to pick up little things a little bit differently. And then so my dad sent me the same, so YouTube, I probably have it on my phone right now, but some military guy was explaining that same thing, how they grid right to left and they do bottom up. Because it just slows everything slightly down. So it's like, because when you go right to left, you might just scan really fast because it's like a natural movement. Where if you go the opposite way, your mind just doesn't want you to do that. And so you're doing a little bit slower and you're picking up some stuff. So I thought about that and I was like, I started doing that a little bit more.
I think there might be something to it.
First of all, I don't.
There's not a right or wrong way for sure.
First of all, I've got some old military stuff that was given to me years ago. That I think that's an interesting thing, and I'd almost like to go back to reference some of that to go, oh, is that legit or not? But I think what's truthful about that is, I don't care what you do. If it makes you slow down when you need to slow down, that's the discipline. That I would tell you that 9 times out of 10, 99 out of 100, guys typically glass way too fast.
100%.
Look, take a field of view, let your eyes scan the entire field of view, move to the next one. Overlap, and
constantly overlapping.
If you do it left to right, right to left, I would tell you that I typically let the terrain dictate that to me more than not, because if I've got a slope coming down,
your eye will naturally want to go through that,
because I always, you just get into that thing too. Like, I always go, well, what looks, when you've done it, and again, I don't try to come off like I'm a know-it-all, but when you've done it so long, I can look at a mountain and go, what looks deery to me?
Exactly. You start right where the goods is. It's hard to explain sometimes, but you just know from experience.
And you know what? What's really funny is that I can get to most any place and go, I'm going to start right there. And just based off of that, I will always, and again, light being good, I will always start in that place, and I will go to the other places that look the same way. And what's really funny about some of those is that I laugh at myself for that, because there's places that I go that I'm like, oh, that's incredible looking. I'm like, never seen a deer there.
Never seen a deer.
And then there's other places that look deery, and there's deer all over it. So, but I would generally tell you that, I try to let the terrain, I don't know, there's a place that I'm always thinking about, in central Arizona, and it's really steep canyons and got, broken up ponderosa and whatever. And if I could just put you in that spot, you would do things vertically more than you do side to side, because it's just the way that the trees allow you.
I can visualize it in my head.
For me personally, it's kind of like the Plinko machine, right? It's just, you just kind of letting the optics go down through the trees, and I go up and I grab another deal. And so whether you do that top to bottom up, what, like Coues deer, like I generally will start and it doesn't always have to be top or bottom, but I generally take the upper third, but sometimes I take the bottom. It just depends on where I'm at.
And the same decision, do you glass close, do you glass far first? It's like, there's so many different scenarios when you have to let the mountain determine how you glass it.
I try to take the easy things first and take the escapes first.
Because you want to see, you would sit down, maybe you spook that buck.
Did I disturb something? Take the escape routes first. Look for the big things with the wider field of view optics, and then, as you start, So there's definitively a method to that. But like if you got a hunting partner, well, one guy is taking the escape routes while the other guy is getting the big optics out and doing that. And so, and
there's like you just said, that good teamwork thing right there. Like that's a good strategy.
100% that is.
If you have some bigger optics and you're really good on the spotter, maybe you have your friend in the morning. He's just a spotter guy. He's looking those far places because you might have a deer escape or go into the trees, and you're kind of doing that close work. So that's why optics is super fun. There's so many different cool strategies we can talk about.
Again, it all comes back to there's no right or wrong. And it's, there's, I don't know. When you got your buddies and you're all doing that, we make a competition out of it.
Oh yeah, doing the same thing.
And that's always a fun thing.
Whoever spots the most deer gets to shoot the first deer.
Or either spots the first deer, or whoever doesn't see something buys breakfast, or whatever the deal is. There's always a way to make that fun.
And for quick reference too, that video, I pulled it up here on my phone, the text message from my dad. So the YouTube video that my dad was referencing about the right to left instead of left to right, the title is "What Army Snipers Go Through at Sniper School Boot Camp." So if you search that,
yeah, send me the link because I'd love to go through it and listen. And
it was really interesting just to think about different things.
There's definitively some guys that have done that and been very influential about glassing, and there's a lot of lingo, and I will tell you that the things I have read are so, like, there's some words I got to look up, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But some of those things that when you really decipher all the info, like, we kind of already do some of that naturally.
Yep.
But, hey, when guys, I would assume that when a guy goes from, boot camp to whatever his line is in the military, if he gets to the point he's at sniper school, he's done stuff, but maybe that guy's never looked for a pair of optics before. I mean, you never know what you're going to get.
Yep.
And I would bet that their line of training is incredible.
Oh yeah.
So I'm interested in it, and
I was like trying to take like inspiration from other disciplines and see, like, can I incorporate it in hunting? Can I incorporate it in my glassing? And I bet you probably do the same thing I do. I haven't talked about this much, and this is an article that I've been kind of writing for a little bit, so I'm just going to tease it out there right now. But it's basically, I don't hear a lot of people talking about it all. The only time I've actually talked about it is when I give seminars to people, because like a close-knit group, and I'm like, sometimes you want to hold some of these things back, but I feel morally obligated, to tell some stuff I've maybe learned over the years.
Right.
But basically I call it like the mental side of glassing, which I don't think is talked about at all. It's like when I'm sitting there glassing, I zone out everything. Like if I'm sitting there glassing, thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner that night, or what's happening at home with family or at work, and your thought process and your mind's just going crazy as you're trying to pick up an animal.
Yep.
Your mind technically can't think of two things at once. Like,
so it's
like you have to be focused at the task at hand. You have to clear your thoughts. My only goal right now is to pick up an animal. I can't be thinking about, what's tomorrow going to be like. Hey, there's only 2 days left. Like, I need to find an animal. Like, you have to clear your thoughts and just focus in on, okay, I'm looking at this timber patch. I'm just going to grid this, grid that. Look over here, look over there. Switch my optic with spotter maybe for a little bit. Go back and forth. Not listening to music. I see friends sometimes put earbuds in and listening to music while they're glassing. Like, I think that's really bad, because you need to focus at the task at hand, and your mind cannot be thinking about two things at once, because then you're gonna scan casually. You're gonna maybe hurry through glassing. There's no animals here, but you really weren't focused.
I first of all, I think there's a ton of truth to what you're saying. I would tell you that I think the best times glassing, and the best I've got, there's certain days, or some by myself, some with people, but I can tell you that there's certain times where there was no distractions.
Yeah.
And, God loved the cell phone, right? I mean, we all love them.
Put those things away. Don't be checking service.
But it's hard because, if I go glass in the morning before work starts or something like that, especially as we get, Arizona's, ridiculously hot right now. So, I try to scout, like now that it's August, like I try to scout in August, September, and then, there'll be some breaks in there. And then, I'm always gearing everything up towards the, to the October hunts, and then gearing everything then to the, December hunts. So it's typically in some form of stage like that. So, I would just tell you that I think some of my best times that I've ever had, there was zero distractions.
Yep.
I wasn't being texted, every 5 seconds, and I call it going black, or black ops, or they ghosted. Like, I think that's sometimes enjoyable, because you're not texting what you saw. It's just you're just off the grid for a little while.
Yeah, and I've even succumbed to it sometimes. You get up on a high glassing knob. You've been hunting for 2 days. You're like, do I have cell phone service? And like, that's kind of the worst thing to do at that moment, because you need to be. You're out there hunting.
But I think that there's something that you're talking about too, that people ask all the time, like, how long do you glass? Or first of all, I'm always prepared to glass from literally. Civil twilight to civil twilight. Like, I
just love it. Yep,
I'll stay as long as I can, and I'll do it, and I'll sit in the same spot. If I know that there's something that I should be interested in, then I'll stick around. And if I've seen deer in there before, then that's what I do.
Yep.
Because in certain situations, if you see a whitetail buck and you've seen him, in August or September, if he's not, eaten by a lion by that time or whatever the deal is, that deer's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He's not moving.
Pick him up.
He lives right there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think we've always said kind of 400 yards, 800 yards on either side of that. I mean, their home range just isn't that big.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll glass as long as I feel like I've, torn it apart.
Yeah.
And there's days that you do that and you see maybe 2 deer, and then you go back in 3 days later and there's, you've seen deer all over the place. Like, where were they?
Yep.
So there's all those scenarios that keep a guy like, is he seeing deer? Is he not seeing deer? But mentally though, I'm just always like, I will glass as hard and as long as it takes to produce what we're trying to do.
I think you gotta think of it too as a mentality. Like, you got to be present at the task at hand. You got to be present in the glassing moment. And I've even done it before, like, not to be mean or anything, but I've even told like my brother or my dad when I'm hunting, like, hey guys, you guys just got to chill for a little bit. I just want to, we can have fun conversations when we're doing other things like late at night, but like right now I am focused and I'm trying to find you guys a deer. So just maybe I'm just going to go over here and go glass by myself for a little bit just so I can collect my thoughts and just be present. But like, they might have conversations about like, oh yeah, where are we going to go next? And I'm like, you almost can't think about where you're going to go next because we're here right now. And I think really like clearing your thoughts and glassing, it opens the door. You put that bino on a tripod, like we're saying, and you do all this stuff right. You're sitting there glassing and you just clear everything away and just focus.
Well, I mean,
like I think, like I read a lot of these, books about like mental management and like this thought processes and like how these champions, how they go about their training and their work ethic. And it's like, I think it all like, you can incorporate a lot of that stuff.
I think there's hunting. Absolutely some truth to what you're saying. Yeah. But like I would tell, so not to pick on anybody, but whether you're listening to a podcast or whatever, I get it. Like I understand.
Some people might actually help them.
But I mean, whatever floats your boat. But I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've been sitting somewhere, and you can hear like the stream below you,
mm-hmm.
and you can hear the birds, and all of a sudden you hear like a rock kick or whatever.
Yep.
And I'll swing the optics over in that general direction and be like, You gotta be kidding me.
You're present in the moment, and because of that, you picked up on a little bit of clue.
I know, but if you've got headphones in, and you hear something like that, there is no way possible that you ever would have known that rock just kicked up over there,
mm-hmm.
and that deer snuck in and snuck out or whatever before you ever knew it.
Yep, I've done that deer hunting before. We have deer up in these like high little like rock outcroppings or shale, and all of a sudden they kick a rock down by accident, like boom, you pick up on it like 800 yards away.
Well, I mean. I can't even think. I mean, I will tell you this right now. If it had not been for being able to hear, that big bull that we've talked about in Arizona,
mm-hmm.
that I think is still my unicorn bull and giant, Michael Parks killing it, with Jay as the guide and the whole thing. That bull, I never would have seen that bull if I had not had my ears.
Yep.
Because the first thing there was the kick of the rocks from the cow being pushed through an opening. That swung me over there. And then he growled like it was like the most guttural. I mean, if you didn't hear that, I guess I know there's different times people do different things, but I just would tell you that if you're not listening, I think for me, I don't want the distraction of the music.
No, I go hunting for a reason.
I don't want anything.
Mm-hmm.
I want my thoughts. That's for me, but I think it's helped me find a lot more than it's ever hurt me. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm. So another, even though I want to keep going on that because like that's like you said, we could go on a whole podcast.
And I think you're headed down the right deal, and we can talk about that for sure.
That's why I like having you on. I like picking up the phone and talking to you, and I like that's now we can just like broadcast. So these are like our normal conversations. If people really realize what we talk about on a daily basis, this is like exact sort of stuff.
Well, pretty much.
Like.
Hey, Cody, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'll like text you at 10:30. You'll text me at like 11 some nights. Like, yeah, you awake? And I'm like, yeah, I am. Let's chat.
Yeah, let's chat about that.
But
what are we going to do?
One of the other questions I'm sure you get all the time, I want to know your preference or how you kind of walk people through the situation is
So even though you said, you'd rather have binos than spotters, but for the guys who really are looking at upgrading their spotter, you always have the question, angled versus straight.
Oh, well, okay. So first of all, I'm always inclined to use a straight spotting scope.
Okay.
The reason being, if I'm looking through binos and I spot something of interest, I don't care what it is, validation, verification, whatever, I'm going to lock my tripod down, lock the tilt, lock the pan, and then I'm going to remove the binos straight off, and I'm going to slide the spotting scope straight on, and I'm going to focus and look. And I should be basically looking at within
it's very quick target acquisition.
Total target acquisition. That's it.
Yep.
Because, again, depending on the time of day, depending on what you're doing, I guess maybe that's just from coos deer. I just feel like
sometimes you get there quick.
Like you get them on top of a ridge or something. Well, first of all, they disappear half the time.
Gray ghost.
I mean, they just do so good at that. And if you take the reason I've had deer, and I'm sure everybody can identify this. Certainly anybody that's on a coos deer, but you're looking at the bush that they just crawled into, and you go to switch your spotting scope out, and you're like, where'd they go?
Yeah.
Only to figure out that deer, literally has been in the bush the whole time, and now all of a sudden, so if I just had put the straight spotting scope on it and looked straight at it, it would have, I would have known that the deer didn't walk out or didn't leave or whatever. So I just target acquisition for me is the most important thing.
Yep.
Now, truth be told, so everybody, all the guys that are like, getting mad at me at this moment, I'm not saying that the straight is more comfortable. It's not more comfortable.
Yeah.
But I'm saying because I'm only using these spotters X number of percent, 10%, 15% max.
Yep.
I don't care about comfort at that point. I know that guys like doing certain things, and I'm not. It's not about arguing about it. It's just a matter of what's important to you. If target acquisition is the best through a straight, then use a straight.
Yep.
I'm pretty coordinated with that stuff now. Like I can look on the side of a hill and I can swing it angled over and look into it and go, I'm pretty much on. But I still had to take my binos off, drop the tripod, slide the other on, and then look down into it and make sure I'm in the same spot. And it, some people go like, well, God, how quick do you have to be? Well,
sometimes you got to be quick.
Sometimes you got to be pretty darn quick at that.
Have I ever told you the story about my brother and his complete hatred towards my angled spotters?
Oh, this ought to be good.
Yeah. So, like, we're sitting there glassing, picking up deer, with binos. He's like, oh, I think I got a good deer. Give me your spotter really quick. And he never packs his spotter. He has a straight Swaro. He always just keeps it, back in the hotel or whatever. Cause he's like, I got my big one. I'm going to always carry it because it's a little more light gathering, So I hand him my spotter, which is an angled. So then he has to do the same thing you're talking about. Take his binos out, put it on there. He has to drop his tripod. So everything is messed up. Like he lost exactly where it's at. And he's trying to look through it. And he just is so frustrated because he has to look down through it. He lost where the animal's at because he had to slide his straight spotter because he's so used to a straight. And several times he has threatened to take that angled spotter and chuck it down the mountain. He's like, I hate this thing with a passion. He's like, you will never get me. If you gave me one of these, Brady, one of your old ones, I would sell it and buy a straight instantly. He just can't do it because that target acquisition and his way is different. And he's so used to a straight, he absolutely hates it. And I'm trying to walk through the benefits, and he sees it, but he's like, dude, that straight's just so money. I can just put it right on there.
People used to accuse me of like, well, how do you know you don't use a straight? I'm like, or use an angled. And I forced myself, for an entire season to take an angled. Testing optics, doing the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to keep doing this.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that there wasn't moments that they were more if you're sitting on the desert floor looking up, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I use a BTX, and I love looking through a BTX or the Koas, or I have no problems looking through the angleds.
Yep.
But there's just certain times, but at least on those, I'm already looking at the thing. So I can watch them and do that. But generally speaking, I just, for me, it's about target acquisition, and I want to switch from binos to a spotter and be on the same basic field of view.
Do you think it's more skewed straight, or is it pretty 50-50 for most people?
I think it's probably like 60-40.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You know, I know we have that discussion all the time, but I think it's probably 60-40.
Yeah. The one time
I think if you look at our sales, I think the last time I pulled all those numbers, I think it was pretty close to that.
Yeah. The only time I ever wish I do have a straight is sometimes when we're, just covering country, maybe glassing from a road with a window mount, and I throw my spotter up, and then I gotta turn the bell. I gotta like lean into it with maybe my left eye because I'm in the driver's seat. If I had a straight there, like that'd be a lot easier for just long distance glassing from a vehicle.
Well, and that kind of brings something else up. I don't stand a lot when I glass.
Yeah, because it's less stable.
So a lot of guys are like, well, I'm 6'4", and I mean, I don't know what you're 6'5" or what.
Yeah.
So, and I get it. Like if you use an angle, truthfully,
tripod can be a little bit lower.
Tripod would be lower. You don't have to have it. But my solution to that is just don't stand.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like standing anyway.
Yep.
So I think that every time, every inch that you get farther away from the ground, you're less stable and blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of people that's what they want to do. They may have a bad back, they may have a situation. And I don't know, maybe they just, they don't have an attention span to do that. And I'm not making fun of it. I'm just simply saying, hey, at least you're using tripod.
Exactly.
But I would just always tell people, like, the lower you get with a tripod, the more stable it is.
Mm-hmm. One of the funny things, too, about talking angle versus straight, there's one circumstance. I was archery hunting deer, and I glassed up this buck, bedded in the sagebrush. Just the tips of his tines were sticking out. And he was kind of close, but I really wanted to put my spotter up and dissect this deer. I was like, do I want to waste some effort stalking this deer? I don't know whether deer's around there to blow up. So I can see some extra tines, and like there's other deer there. So this is one of the greatest benefits of an angle. I don't think many people do it very often, but I was able to lift my tripod up just above the sage. Instead of straight, I have to pick up and more of my head profile will be above the sage.
Right.
I turned the bell all the way down. So I'm just like laying underneath the sagebrush, still being able to glass. And I was like, this is where another benefit towards the angle is. I didn't have to get my profile above all the vegetation. But it's that's just a one-off use case too. But I just kind of laughed to myself.
I would flat out tell you whatever works.
Whatever works, yeah.
Whatever gets the job done.
Yep.
But yeah, so I get it. I mean, there's certain instances that all those work and are favorable, and I would just tell you, like, pick the thing that works best for you,
mm-hmm.
and go with it.
Yep. That leads me to another question.
Oh, I'm full of answers.
I
hope.
I don't know if this is okay to say nowadays with our PC world, but sometimes when you're talking about optics and optic quality, is it the user or is it the glass? So is it the Indian or the bow?
Well, okay, so look, here's the thing. So, look, optics are not magic.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this all the time. You take a guy and give him a good optic in a tripod and put him in a place he's never been, he's bound to find deer.
Yep.
But you take a guy that is really experienced and knows what he's looking for, and the movement and the give him the natural setting and go, hey, find deer in this. The guy that's got the more time behind the glass, he's probably going to find deer faster and quicker.
No matter what he uses, he could probably find it.
And so I would always tell you, I think it's the glasser, but I think what happens is that the better glass you use, the better it heightens all those things that you do well.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you give me an okay piece of glass, I have enough experience. I know how I'm going to maximize that glass.
Yep.
And I think if you just flip what we've talked about, like if you're saying, oh, well, is it glass or look, at the smallest levels, I know there's some really skilled guys that use whatever optic, and they put it on the tripod and they find a lot of deer and they kill deer with it.
Oh yeah.
So again, I've never ever have I just said, oh well, to be this you have to have this.
Yep.
It's never been about that.
I think that's the beauty of hunting.
I'm just always trying to maximize whatever edge or whatever I can get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I know that there's guys out there that are like, I'm an admitted optics snob. I want the best optics I can put my eyes on, period. Yep. Whatever helps me dissect country in a methodical, surgeon kind of way, that's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And it just is what it is.
A lot of times is that straight like glass quality, or is that like a lot of coatings that's kind of helping some of that? Is it the combination of all of them?
I've always said that optics, you get to a point where, I mean, look, you can glass with them all, but when you start paying the bigger money, right, mm-hmm. you're paying literally for the smaller intangible things.
Yeah.
And it is. How does that glass filter light? Chromatic aberration. All of those things, the focus wheel, does it allow you to, the diopter, all of those things, does it allow you to have the best and most, clear picture?
Yep.
All of those things add up.
Speaking of diopter, do you ever have guys call you and say like, I can't see through this bino at all? It's like, it looks so weird, but they just never know to adjust the diopter?
I want to say it's uncommon, but it happens.
Yeah.
It definitively happens, for sure.
That's why I always make sure to reference that diopter when I hand over my binos to another person.
I think the bigger one is that people with eyeglasses don't realize that the eye cups move in and out.
Yep. Yeah, walk me through that part. For people listening.
Well, yeah. So, eye relief is important, and it's probably more important to guys with eyeglasses because you're already putting the optic farther away from your actual eyeball, right? Mm-hmm. So you got to be really careful with. I mean, there's just certain optics that do better than others, and generally speaking, there are certain. Let's just call it brands that seem to excel at it, and I think what happens is that when you have eyeglasses on, it tends to make the field of view shrink, and you just don't have as good a picture.
Yep.
Well, when they made it so that the eye cups twist down and take some of that eye or that distance away, mm-hmm. so now you can get the lenses of the binocular closer to your eyes.
Yep.
It opens it up. And I mean, Brady, I've had, and this is the honest to God true story, I've had people come in the shop, and I've literally had a grown man basically not cry, but get weepy.
Mm-hmm.
But think about, I almost get kind of emotional thinking about it, because I gave that man, well, that sounds horribly wrong. I gave that guy the opportunity to see like he's never seen before through a pair of binoculars. No one has ever explained to him. No one ever said, "Oh, hey, have you tried this?" And he did. He and I'll say it. He took a pair of Swarovski 10x50 ELs, put the eye cups down, and he literally was like, "Oh my God."
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've never been able to see like that.
Yeah, just that little thing.
And he bought them on the spot, and he just got emotional about it because he was like, he was so frustrated with everything that he was doing.
Yeah, that's got to be so rewarding.
Well, you kind of get emotional like that. I mean, it's like watching a TikTok or some video of somebody that's never seen color before, and that's what it felt like for that guy.
I can't wait to get some of those glasses. They keep joking at the office they're going to get me some of those because I'm really colorblind. I'm like, I really want to know what real colors are like. So if I ever edit my photos and they look really horrible, Cody, it's because I'm slightly colorblind.
Well, I'm just telling you that moment. Those are one of those distinct moments I'll never forget because.
Yeah.
I say I just opened up a door for that guy that he didn't know was the door.
Yeah.
Call it a window, whatever. He just was like, oh my God. I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah, that gives you fuel to the fire about like why you do what you do. You just love helping the customer out.
Well, it is. My phone goes off daily, and especially like during the scouting and hunting season where guys are using their gear that they bought and they're putting to use for the first time, and they're like, these things, this is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it changed my whole, like, I found way more game than I've ever found before.
Yep.
That to me That again, not to beat a dead horse, but that is 100% the most rewarding factor that I get. Period.
Yeah. And it goes to like for the eye cup thing, like if me with contacts, I can actually twist them down and use them as well. Don't a lot of people like to do that? Because it kind of gives you a little increased perceived field of view, maybe, instead of having them twisted out.
I have recently, in the last couple of years, started to. I mean, I don't use them. I wouldn't say everything I do. My wife would probably tell you along, but Megan, if you're listening, yeah, I've started to use readers on short stuff, and I completely say that the phone and social media has done that to me. But when I glass, I mean, I have really good eyesight. And I would just tell you that I keep my eye cups down regardless.
Okay.
And I think there's something to be said about that. I would call it I don't know if an apparent or
it's a perceived
field of view.
Yep.
I will always it's like Jay and the twin spotters.
Oh yeah, he takes his
he
off.
always takes his eye cups off, and when you look at those spotters, 25 to 50 eyepiece with a 65 millimeter, there's just a combination there. It's like why would you not use it this way? Because it's vivid and it's a distinct difference.
Yep.
I would do that. Anywhere that I can get a chance to keep the eye cups down, I do.
Yep.
Very rarely do I have to keep the eye cups up.
Speaking of glass,
which by the way, when some people they do that, and it's almost like they don't have that place for their
for it to rest on your eyebrow.
So and when you're using a tripod, that becomes way less important.
Yep.
So anyway, it's just something to think about.
How important do you feel it is to glass in comfort? Either get in a comfortable position.
The more comfortable you can make your glassing session, the better off you are.
Yeah.
So within reason, right? I will occasionally carry a stool.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, how important do you think a glassing
again,
stool
depending
is,
on if I'm in the field away from everything, very rarely do I ever. I would consider myself a world-class glassing spot.
You dig out.
I will find something.
Yep.
And generally speaking, I find really good ones. But yeah, I mean, I will try to get, if I can get a little bit of a rock face or a stone or a boulder, I will carve out just about anything. I typically like the steeper slopes.
Yep, same.
I literally will do anything I can to reduce weight like that. I mean, but I actually like it like that. I'm not saying, I love the stools and hills, use it all. Whatever makes you, again, there's guys that have different needs, right? So I am blessed with hardly zero back issues whatsoever. And so I can sit,
leaning forward the whole time.
I just think it's, some guys like the chairs. I think you use whatever helps you out.
Yeah.
I absolutely 100% always, no matter what, have some form of glassing pad.
Yep.
Now, whether that's I've seen guys take the like turkey seats. I've seen guys take the
with a back chair.
Remember those old? I don't even know if they still make them, but those heated like seats that you would sit in your deer stand on, but they get hot. Like I've seen guys use those. I've seen just about everything.
Yeah, those little chairs you could take to sporting events that have a little backrest on them.
I've seen guys have their wives like make them. My brother uses, and it actually. And Wade, if you're listening, I know he knows this, but like he's a gear nut like that. But he uses a Wiggy's pillow. Well, because he's got a pillow to sleep on, and he uses a Wiggy's pillow to glass from. He's done that for years.
Yep. I always try to explain to people too. The more comfortable you be while you're glassing, to a point, the better off you're glassing, because you're not going to ever you sit there, you glass for a while, you might get tired or exhausted because you're sitting on a rock or you got something underneath you and you're like leaning over. and then you're going to pull your eyes away from the optics. What are you going to do when you do that? You're going to kick back and relax, and your eyes are on the optics. You're not finding the animal right now.
It all comes back to if you took, and this is the nutshell. This is like the keys to the kingdom right here in my eyes. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you took the time, and let's say you were going on a 10-day hunt. Mm-hmm. If you took the time from day one, first light day 1, last light day 10, and you took the time and added it up for every stupid little adjustment that you have to make, comfortable, not comfortable, eyes are getting, whatever, add all of it up. And I think we would be shocked to figure out how much time that if you got like a bonus round and they said, okay, you get, this is what you get left in light.
Yep.
I think we would be shocked as to how much light we would get back at the end of that hunt. Mm-hmm. And to me, all of this that we're talking about, 1,000% is to maximize that time.
Yep.
Because you think about it like, look, I've got a wife, 3 kids, 2 dogs, a house. I've got all that stuff going on. And I only get to go out at, X amount of time.
Yep.
So whatever I have to do to maximize all of that stuff
100%
to keep me behind the glass so that I'll do whatever. And I just think you just make whatever, and I would just tell you like comfort foods on the trail.
Yeah. What's your favorite glassing snack?
I don't know. Pop-Tarts were always a good one.
Pop-Tarts are always a good one. They are.
The problem with Pop-Tarts are they always get cracked. Somehow one way or another they get cracked. But
you're like a sour gummy guy or like a Skittles?
Not a ton of sweets, but always the mini Snickers are always good, or like the Milky Ways or whatever. I mean, just some of those bags like that, just simple stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know. If you get into the too much, they peanut M&Ms, like that's a classic one because it's kind of hard to screw up.
Yep.
They don't melt on you. They're just they are what they are.
Yep.
But there's whatever you can do to do that. If you're going to take a nap, have your buddy glass while you're, if you're watching water, you're in an area where you haven't seen a lot of movement, and maybe the moon's, bad for you at night, and the deer are nocturnal, and then the deer are going to feed, or they're going to water during the day.
Split up.
Tell your guy to take a nap, and you're glassing, and then flip flop.
Have you ever fallen asleep glassing?
Oh,
I've done that a lot. And they actually
is a fat dog heavy? Yeah. So
I'm just in my binos. All of a sudden, like Neville's like, "Hey, Brady," and I'm like, "Whoa!" I just snoozed off.
The worst one is, so I always love the guy that glasses so much that he falls asleep, that when he looks at you, he kind of has the
ring.
like his optics are so awfully dirty that they have like mascara on him.
Yep.
That one to me is always the favorite one.
Yeah.
If that guy, you got to keep that guy motivated.
Yeah.
You got to
I've always seen it before where like you and my brother was starting to glass, all of a sudden I see his optics start to like pick up because he's starting to lean heavier. I'm like, Bryce, wake up.
Yeah, I think back about, God, this has probably been 15 years now, something like that. I was glass one time and I got the chills and I just felt like nauseous and like 4 hours later I wake up and my buddy looks at me and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I don't know, man." I said, I felt nauseous and like something, I don't know what happened, but he literally was like, "Dude, I was about to call your brother. Like, I thought you were gonna die. I mean, he's like, I've never seen you sleep. I mean, we've literally, spent hundreds and thousands of hours glassing together, and he's looking at me like, what is going on with him? And like, I went through like a full blown sweat or whatever happened. And by the way, we weren't drinking the night before the whole thing. And I just had one of those moments. I got outdoors, I guess, and somebody was telling me to take a nappy, I guess, and I did.
I think one of my favorite things is when I actually pack a stove
with me to glassing knobs and make a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit of coffee, make tea, make some bone broth, something hot. I can sit
Something
there
hot.
and just that's life being lived right there to me.
Well, I will take I've got one of the smaller Yetis, and I will take, especially if we're just doing day hunts or whatever.
Yep.
I will stop by whatever the Circle K is, and I will hit a hot chocolate, and I will dish that up.
Good pro tip
and,
there.
And flat out 100%, there's times when it is, and most people don't give Arizona credit for being cold. But I don't care. You can say it's a dry heat, but it's a dry cold, and it can bite you.
Yep.
And there's just those certain times when when we get below the 20s and down into the teens and whatever, and you're sitting there glassing for 4 hours in the morning, you need a little pick me up.
I feel you.
And
that's a good way to
that hot chocolate does it just about every time. So, but those are. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, glassing, comforts of food, things you can eat quick, things that'll keep you, moving, and liquids, of the appropriate choice. Or, I don't think it's a time for drinking, but
Yep.
I think that makes it go south a little faster.
Yeah, definitely. You're not focused again. Back to the being present. You're not
I
present
don't
if you're
think
doing
you're
that.
present at that moment.
No. Well, I just got one more deep question. I know we've had this discussion a lot too. The importance of, I think a lot of people don't realize, you have a level on your tripod, or
Yep.
you've got a level on your head. Like the importance of trying to level that up. Like maybe not making it perfect, but there is a rhyme or reason to probably making a tripod level while you're sitting there glassing.
Well, if you're anal retentive, obsessive compulsive, there's guys that, it's almost like they're trying to glass. Like if you got a slope going down out in front of you.
Yep.
Look, it's just easier if you keep the tripod level. Okay, that's why we can move the legs up and down and we can articulate them out. And if you'll keep them level, that way when you swing left and right, you're not swinging at like funny angles or coming like you call it, like there's like a loop in it, and you're like, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Because what happens with that is that certainly on certain tripods more than heads more than others, you've got to constantly, you either got to loosen it up and then tighten it back. That you're just causing yourself more movement.
Yep, because that tripod or the glass is always going to want to rotate.
I just like
angle.
keeping everything as angled as possible. I would tell you there's a couple things that I hate to say bug me, but
I'm loving this part.
Well, but there's just so like you'll see guys like extend their legs all the way.
Oh yeah.
And they're out all the way, and then they're like down below, and it's like. That's not where the strength is in the tripod. Like the strength comes from when they're I don't care if it's 45 or whatever, but when you splay them all the way out and extend them, and then the optics, it just gives them
flexes on those smaller legs
way too much, and I think you're kind of asking for it to not be stable. So I would tell people that it is kind of a. Try to keep the tripod legs up underneath you a little bit, not straight up and down, but just a little bit. And then I try to, for as much as possible, not to use the center post. I still want a center post.
Yep.
Just because so I can make little adjustments.
Yeah, but you'd rather use those legs.
But what I would tell you is that when I see legs, right? And I see most of and like let's say a third or more of the height is coming from the tripod head. I don't care who you are, don't care what you're doing. I know that tripod is not as stable as what it should be.
No matter how heavy that tripod is.
Period.
Yep.
And to me, you're just making it less effective.
Yep.
So I would rather extend the legs farther and get it closer and have I just would always do that.
Yeah, I'll throw a third one on there too. Is one of my pet peeves is when guys are trying to lengthen their tripod up to get that right height. They're doing the shorter legs first. So the shorter legs, the legs at the bottom, they're going to be your thinnest legs. They're going to have the most flex. So you got to start at the top. You want those thicker, heavier legs. You want to use that length first before you ever go down to the bottom legs.
I think when I sit down, I always thinking, okay, well, depending on where the slope is in front of me, right? I always take that and hold the trundle about where I want to be, and then I extend the middle leg, to where I know it's going to stick, and then I go outward, back. So typically, the leg, depending on the terrain and what you're doing, or in the rocks or not. Generally speaking, like most of the time, I only have to put down the middle leg.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You
I
can
don't
rest
know,
on something.
6-7 inches, something like that, and it really doesn't have to go down that far.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's, guys make that mistake where they think they all have to be even and they splay them way out, and I just don't think it's necessary.
Yep.
So, I mean,
Yeah, another thing I always do is I glass so much that I got used to, like we said, like knowing the handle's on the right side is facing forward, but that little lever, the tension lever for the center post, I always have that on the left side.
yeah.
Every time when I set mine down, mine's on the left because I'm glassing like this, and if I have to move it up quickly,
I would
can quickly
typically
adjust
tell
it.
you that mine's rotated so that it's on the right, because I have my hand would be out here. Yeah, so
It depends on what you're used to, but like when you glass so often, you'll figure out
Right.
these little small details of like,
Yep.
you realize I do that the same all the time. I must do that for a reason, and it just makes it so you remember where everything's at all the time. Too.
and this again, it goes back to this whole thing. That's why there's nothing wrong in this.
Yep.
Do what works for you.
Do what works and remember what you're doing. So every time we get, because there might be a quick instance where you have to lift that tripod up and you're fumbling down below trying to figure out where your levers are. But if you use your tripod, use your binos enough, or spot or whatever, you'll realize where all
Yep.
those different parts are on it. That's why I think it's like one of the benefits too, is just getting out and scouting in the summer so you practice more with this
I
gear.
always think that people, the other one that drives me nuts anyway, well, it's not my problem because I try not to have it happen with me, but so your plates and whatever you're connecting, your binos to, or so I want everything congruent,
Yep.
like, away from me. So like I notice sometimes you'll see a guy that's got his plate on his, on the bottom of his bino adapter, or, whatever he's using, and it's cocked like by, 15
yeah.
degrees, and it's like, you can see him fighting it over there. It's like, well, come here for a minute.
Yep,
And you get him all lined out, and you line this out, and you lock that down, and then when you slide that on, the whole thing is again, when I lock my tripod down and I go to take one off, versus that way I know that my, if your spotting scope is not congruent, the plate, and I maybe we should back up a minute. The plates that on the bottom of your whatever apparatus you're using, the bino adapter or the spotting scope, if the plate isn't congruent with the foot that you're attaching it to, it's just creating more time for you to find
Exactly.
whatever you're going to find. And so I'm just always real careful with those.
I even go one step further because, again, not to throw my brother under the bus all the time, but when I got my brother set up with optics, he had his old window mount. So I converted them all over to Arca Swiss. Everything's Arca Swiss plates on the bottom. So it fits with the VA5 head, his spotter and tripod, all that same thing. But then when we're in our vehicle moving around, his old window mount is like a Manfrotto foot.
Oh, yeah.
So he would have to waste time, we're in the vehicle, unscrewing his Arca Swiss, screwing that Manfrotto on and putting it over. And eventually I got him a conversion plate. I was like, hey, let's just take a plate on top of that Manfrotto.
Yep.
We'll be able to make it work. That way everything is now congruent and can function together.
I think it goes back to that whole thing of, those are some of the things. I spend a good deal of time explaining to people how to function in a very efficient, quick manner in terms of putting your head on your tripod with the plates, and maybe that guy's trying to shoot from this, and so there are pretty much attachments that will allow you to connect and disconnect quickly and efficiently.
Yep.
Guns, cameras, phone, whatever you're doing.
Yep.
It typically has a system. I would tell you that they're like guys that frequently call and go, I've got like 8 people that glass with me and they're all using different stuff. Okay. Well, for instance, put a Suray MP20, -20 on them. Because you put that on top of that head, however you connect it.
Yep.
Now you've got Arca Swiss on the whole thing.
Yep. And that's what I've also tried to do is like my hunting partners who I hunt with all the time is mainly my dad, my brother, and my brother's best friend. I have gotten them all converted over the same system. So let's say that one day I leave my spotter or I didn't bring my 15s, my brother has them. I can just borrow his, throw them on my tripod.
Yep.
That way we're all the same. That way no matter what type of optic we have, it works on every single one of our kits. I think that's a big tip too, just making sure everyone there made the same page. Yeah, it's going to be an investment. Maybe you have to buy something else, but eventually we have to upgrade. Just like think of who you're hunting with all the time. like just try to get the same gear that they have to make it so it works well together.
The people probably need to understand that almost every head, or let's go tripods first. Every tripod, typically at the top of the center post, it's either 1/4-20, which is less, way less than anything else, but almost always it's 3/8. Some manufacturers, Gitzo, Slick, some of them will have changeable where you can unloosen it, put it in upside down and tighten it down, and you'll have 3/8 on one side and 1/4 on the other. So if you have one like that, you can always do either or. I prefer 3/8 on those bigger connections. But almost everything in optics, connection-wise, is either 1/4-20 or 3/8. I very, very rarely see any other measurements when you're connecting one quick disconnect part to the other. They're just not there. So I think that's one thing that people don't know about. But so I spend, again, a good portion of my day explaining certain situations, and I will have guys FaceTime me, video, whatever, so I can look at what they're putting together and go, oh, well, yeah, that's that part. You need this, and just to make it easy and simple on them.
Yeah, even going along with that too, like I've had that same thing where I'm hunting again with my family, and their head comes loose all the time, and I'm like, I have a special tool at home. It's not something, everyone can pick it up. They probably have it in their garage. It's just like a pipe wrench with a rubber system.
You could do that.
So I basically crank down on my head, the left, so it's as tight as it goes.
You make sure the panning, the panning motion
is fully locked.
Is locked out.
Yep, and then I take that rubber gasket, put it over the pipe wrench, and make sure it's facing the right way. And then I can grab onto all that stuff there, because it's not. There's all those different components. It's not actually a very round surface.
It's not like you're using a big set of channel locks.
No, I don't want to scratch it. I don't want to scratch everything up. So I use that rubber one because it kind of fits around the pan. And I can just basically take that and just wrench that as tight as it goes. Then I go underneath there, get those set screws set.
And the other way to do it is simply lock your pan out, and then I hold the center post. And now that I know that the panning motion is locked, I will generally use either a little bit of plumber's tape. A little like blue Loctite or something on those, so that when I go to lock that head in, I will get it until just about when it's tight, and then I'll just give it a quick little. And generally speaking, it's enough to seize it up. And I've never had a head come. I've never had that happen.
Yeah, because the worst part is like, maybe you're in an area where you're taking a side-by-side or an ATV, or it's in the back of your truck, it's bouncing around. You never want to sit there and glass. I was like, whoa, this whole system's wobbly. It might be a little windy. All that stuff's going to pay dividends when the situations aren't ideal for glassing. And you don't want a little wobbly head on there. You want to make sure everything's nice and tight.
I think I'm qualified to say that pretty much when it happens this way, when stuff falls off like that, it's generally operator error.
Oh yeah.
It's the you didn't solidify it. And if we can do that, you can get rid of a lot of mistakes.
And that's why, like right now, it is summer. It's off season.
Yeah.
It's important to go through your gear, make sure all your plates are tight, make sure you have all the plates you need, make sure your head's tight, make sure your tripod legs are in working order.
100%.
Go through your gear right now. Most people, I think, probably neglect that in part of your like gear maintenance section.
Yeah.
We've talked so much about optics cleaning, just make sure everything's clean before you go hunting. You've seen some optics sometimes. You've given me a very hard time about how dirty I keep my stuff. So now I'm a lot better. I clean my stuff regularly because I don't want that sticking on there. But it's just like taking the time to go through your gear.
Yeah. Keep the bodily functions off of them. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. All that food and stuff that just falls in my binos when I actually have my bino harness open, the snacks.
Well, the chew leaf, the licorice.
Yeah.
Dots.
Yep.
Like, just you think to yourself, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you get that on there?
Yeah.
And it's all the time. Dirty eyelashes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
you get little beard hair that's falling on there.
But there's certain people that have just way longer eyelashes that are
constantly making marks.
They've got an oil on them, and I've seen that.
Or you're hiking and the person in front of you is kicking up a bunch of dust that's going to your eyelashes. You blink on your optics all the time. And
kind of seen it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you're the optics guru, Cody.
I try very hard.
Well,
no, it's a lot of fun doing it. I can tell you that. But
I
learned. I will tell you this: the other part of the job is I learn something new every day.
Yeah, you're talking to cool people all the time.
I mean,
and like you said, the biggest reward is you get that text or an email that some guy said, "Hey, because of this small little thing, you might have thought it was small, but you educated me on something. I got a certain piece of gear that worked well for me," and then they have that nice photo afterwards, and they're just all smiles and they're
100%.
Like, "You assisted in my hunt. You weren't there, but you were there."
I was there. Mm-hmm. In some way, shape, or form. I was there.
Yeah. So how can people reach out to you if they have some optics questions or
quite simply optics@GOHUNT.com.
Okay.
I mean that's the best way, and that comes in and filters through the main system, and I just tell people, like, if you got questions, give me some time to answer them, and we will get to you. I work very hard at answering all my phone calls and all my messages. I try to do them all in the same day. Some people love the fact that I call in the evening. Very rarely do I get anybody that doesn't like that, but I will try to follow up with any phone call I can during that same business day. If I can do it, I will.
I just want to emphasize too, like I said at the beginning, like, use you as a resource. You are very knowledgeable, and you're always willing to pick up the phone. Like I said, I bug your brain all the time. We talk all the time for a reason. I want to pick your brain and learn about things because, I've been doing this for a while, but there's still things I learn all the time. And even this conversation right now.
Well, but the thing is that just, and I say this to people all the time. Hey, look, I'm not interested in just taking your money.
Yeah, you want to have them a good experience.
If you want to either learn something or. And some guys will be like, well, I want to do this. And I'll say, okay, well, if you're doing that, well, what about this scenario? And by the time, I've had guys just be like, well, I thought I needed, and I'm like, well, here's what you need. Mm-hmm. Have you thought about that? Oh, no. Well, yeah. And then they'll call you back and they'll tell you what they want to do. Yeah. And I'm not, to me, it's just about it's about placing that person with the right gear that they've described to me that they're trying to get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, and I would tell you that rifle scopes is typically the one that really messes people up, just in terms of
first focal plane, second focal plane.
But they just they just don't know where they want to go. So you try to help them and be like, hey, how far are you trying to shoot?
Yeah, everyone doesn't need a 25 power scope.
Yeah. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Mm-hmm. And when you weed through all of that, you finally figure out, well, that guy was, he's been shooting deer at 100 yards for his entire life, and all he wants to do is shoot, 300 to 500 at paper targets. And so you find out where a guy wants to be. And so you help him down that path. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of different ways to get to those places, and I would just think that we try to do that really efficiently and with good quality gear.
Mm-hmm. You're a good guy, Cody. I always say, I can't say enough. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your help, and just your willingness to pick up the phone when people call you and help people out.
Give me a call. I mean, that's what I'm here to do.
Well, no, what you're here.
Look, here's the truth. If I wasn't getting paid for it, people still call me anyway.
Yeah.
So
that's the level of passion you have.
I'll do anything to help somebody, get out in the woods and glass and enjoy themselves.
Yep. And then while you're here, though, this has been really fun. But now we have to go do real work, Cody. You're here for a couple days.
I know. Shooting content is
I'm putting you to work finally. We got a bunch more optics videos coming up.
I might be a little rusty. We haven't. I mean, COVID and all that stuff. Yep. We kind of get a little. Yep. Might have to get the one-shot Cody back.
One-shot Cody's definitely here.
He's here. We'll see.
Yeah. There's gonna be zero editing in this podcast. You nailed it. And so stay tuned. We're going to do a bunch more optics videos with Cody here on our YouTube channel. And then also we're going to have Cody put some more pen to paper here coming up too. We got some cool article ideas we're working on. We have a big project. We're not going to leak it. You know what the project is. We're not going to leak this project, but we've been working on something for a very, very long time. Yep. And I think we're about ready to release it. That'll definitely be a game changer when it comes to helping you out pick a certain gear.
Yeah, it's just educational and helps you decipher what you need and what's going to work best for you.
It's basically our little baby brainchild that you and I have been talking about for so long.
Yep.
And we're going to get this thing done here, and it's going to be
absolutely
amazing.
Yeah, with the new website and everything,
we finally have a good home place for it.
100%.
We just got to put more little ideas down and shore it up. But it's, like I said, it's something you want to keep your eye out for. So I definitely wanted to tease that because, like I said, we've been working on that for a long time, and I think it's going to help people a lot.
I think it's going to answer a lot of people's questions. And I mean, we're still here for you, but it's just going to be able to kind of give people the definitions that they need to have, and then they can apply those definitions to what works for them.
Yeah. So I don't have a timeline on when that's going to happen, unfortunately, but you guys just stay tuned. We'll definitely make a lot of announcements about it, and
it's coming.
It's coming. Like I am really like you said, I'm starting to get goosebumps talking about it because it's going to be one of those things that's just going to add some value and help people out, and it's what we do on a daily basis. Just trying to.
Isn't knowledge everything?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Knowledge is power. Power is more deer on the wall, more meat in the freezer.
Yeah, we will have some fun with it for sure.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast with me. It's been a long time coming.
I know we've tried to a couple times and just gotten sucked into meetings and fun stuff, but this will not be our last. I can guarantee.
I want to make this more of a regular thing with you because, like I said, I had a big scratch paper here of chicken scratch I wrote down. We didn't even cover half of that stuff I want to talk to you about. Maybe more podcasts on gridding, maybe more podcasts on spotters, bino strategies.
There's certain subjects you could just literally go, okay, we're going to hone in on that today.
Even just the anatomy of binos and dive into some of that stuff. I want to know everything in your head, and I want the listeners to hear it all.
Yeah, don't ask for too much because you never know.
All right, Cody. Well, let's go get some.
Well, thank you very much for having me, bud. And we'll and I know this won't be the last. So
it's a pleasure.
Fun. Thank you.